just the fact that anytime we hear happy birthday or discussions surrounding birthday, we should know the birthdays will intensify and we're gonna need a box of tissues, because holy shit. This was hands down the darkest episode since the prologue, and most of it you wouldn't assume would be considered dark, you know? They very much make you let your guard down and say, Suletta's probably gonna win, and honestly, things will be relatively fine. And instead, they end in a prologue fashion where the Elan that we came to expect gets disposed of because they can just put another body that can act as the face of the real one, and getting to know him will never happen. And what a episode. Full live reaction is available on the Patreon. Definitely caught me by surprise a couple of times for sure. But the thing I want to talk about first, before we even jump into all that amazing content, is there's definitely been some speculations and theories pretty early into this show. Suletta has a different name than where she started out as Eri, as in the prologue. And I think after this episode and seeing the true version of him, and the fact that it very much feels like the mother is using her daughter in such a way for revenge, at this point, I'm honestly willing to bet into the theory that Eri is actually Ariel, her Gundam, and that Suletta is just a fake version of the real one. Because when you do look at it, when you look at where she was in the prologue, her little body was like, I don't know, like 6 years old, something like that, and she looks like a teenager, like less than 12 years has passed. But her mother and the characters that we recognize from the prologue definitely look like they've aged more than a decade. You know, it very much feels like everyone's a lot older. Sure, war can do that to people, but I think after seeing an episode where we have a boy who's so ice cold, but then you see the real version of him, and he's honestly just a pompous prick, all things considered. And it very much feels like you can easily dispose of one face if it doesn't live up to expectations and put another one in their place. I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest if the whole concept of her Gundam, this Ariel Gundam that very much took control at the end of the fight and very much felt alive, was actually the real daughter Eri, and that this Suletta is just honestly a fake version planted here, and she doesn't realize it, because obviously if we look back to the prologue, her mother was very terrified in the moment that she was compatible, almost like the Gundam sucks the life force away from someone, right? So how would someone like Suletta be able to use this Gundam but not have her life force sucked away? The only thing that would make sense is that if she got absorbed into that alive Gundam and now she resides in it, and ultimately she used her consciousness to basically be put into like some cyborg new type dilemma sort of a thing. And it all very much lines up. Sure, it might not go that direction, and that very well could just be she changed her name so she wouldn't be caught up in, you know, realizing where she was when she was a kid and stuff. But it all is lining up, especially if by episode 6 you're already putting in the forefront this Ice Prince is very much in a situation where you can very much see the similarities to our girl Eri, Suletta, two different people we don't know yet. And it's going to be interesting to see where they go with that, because I still stick by my idea that we're building up the students to be one faction, the adults are their own, and they all have their own political conflict going on, and eventually it'll be like a triangle of war. I feel like that's where we're building up. It's just, I thought this episode would be, yeah, she'll probably end up winning. Her bet was, I want to get to know you, so therefore, we'll bring another to our side. I was thinking we were going to get a fruits basket type situation where you'd have Yuki and Toru, kind of that mother-son dynamic. It very much felt like that's what he was after. And then instead they just dispose of him as literally a good mother is pretty much pleading for her boy's life. Not saying it's actually the biological mother or anything, but very much it felt like a mother-son connection. And I think when you compare the difference between Suletta's mother, Prospera, as well as this woman, I mean, it's night and day. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not okay to want revenge for however long it's been for all the shit that's happened. I think they mentioned 21 years or something in this episode, and Suletta doesn't look like she's 21 years older than where she was in the prologue, which kind of reinforces everything, right? But at the same time, it just very much feels to me like when you compare the two mother dynamics there, one is continuing to use Suletta to propel this revenge plot forward. The other is trying to keep a boy alive and away from conflict as much as possible. And it's very much night and day with where everything is. But that's why we love Gundam. The political drama, the war-torn stories, they just hit like a goddamn isekai truck, and I love it. The fight itself, though, was pretty damn awesome. Pretty quickly into the fight, it was clear that she was probably going to win. The thing that I was wondering was, were they going to make it a different type of win so it would feel rewarding? I mean, not only do they end up killing our boy and disposing of him, it felt like a different type of fight. Not only were they outside of the dome, so you couldn't cheat, right? It wasn't like you could alter the weather like that's happened before, or lasers don't work and all that other stuff. Instead, you have what should be a disadvantage for Suletta, almost like a swarm of flies, right? It's like all buzzing around her, and if one gets hit, basically it's game over. And just the way they constantly like were evolving the fighting to then ending with like an EMP blast where Ariel takes over and it's literally like an EMP that just shut everything down. And it was pretty crazy because throughout the fight it really felt like sometimes it was kind of like tug of war, who had the little middle part closer to their side, and it was kind of a back and forth throughout it. And there was moments where I was like, my boy's about to win, and then obviously we see how it ultimately progressed, but then to see his face, we've seen the red tinge happen, but to see it like almost like this orange goldish glow that just made him look like he was a rock, it was pretty disturbing at times. And I really liked what they did with the expressions and just the overall progression of that match, because it was insanely well animated, which of course it's Gundam, they know how to animate these types of fight scenes. But even like the sound design, like when they were talking like prior to the fight, they had their helmets on, just the vocal effect to make it sound like they were speaking through an actual helmet, not just someone in a recording booth with a little muffle effect. So just a lot of attention to detail, and even some funny moments. Like, you see Choo Choo at one point, she's just squatting down like she's on the basketball court for some reason. I have no idea why she's doing it, but it cracks me up. Or I think one of my favorite unexpectedly funny moments, that I'm probably the only one who thought it, but if you remember in Attack on Titan when Armin sees like the Santa Titan like peer over the goddamn buildings, when I see Suletta pop up in hers and she's just looking into the window, it's just unexpectedly Attack on Titan to me, and it just cracked me up. In an episode that just honestly I thought was going to be a fun battle, but I wasn't expecting goddamn happy birthday. And at this point, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And holy shit, I mean, the happy birthday over the speakers, it should have said to me, oh shit, someone's about to die. But instead I was like, oh, it's interesting how they use happy birthday here, because it's a lot more sweet than, seeing a little girl basically get sung happy birthday as she exploded everyone around her. But then to see how they bait us in with the end of the episode with her excited to meet up and learn more about him. He's so happy, but it's just so painful to know that the next face that she meets will just act like he doesn't even know her, sort of a thing. And it's pretty heartbreaking. Though I will say I like Mireen and how she's progressing with her relationship with Suletta. It very much is come across like she cares for her as a friend in a way, and I like how she even has a joke about how like she doesn't mind a little two-timing, but ultimately she has to be backed by curfew. I don't care if you go two-time on me, just make sure I don't have to eat dinner alone, right? Just some funny stuff in a pretty heartbreaking episode. I mean, sometimes you need to laugh at the pain because otherwise it just eats you away. But I will say, like, this was the darkest episode since the prologue, and we're starting to see the cracks show more and more, and shit will hit the fan in ways that people might not expect if they're newer to Gundam, but I mean, the prologue definitely gets you established with the type of pain that this series will have, and they're doing a great-ass job so far. But of course, I leave another episode of Gundam Witch from Mercury very impressed, if not devastated, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I know we have a break, I believe, next week, because there's like a special broadcast, so I think we have to wait 2 weeks for the next episode, but what a delay, am I right, with the pain they left us with, which maybe we need that breathing room. But thoughts and feelings, theories, if you got any, down below, leave a like if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new around here. Of course, you can check out the Patreon if you want to see my full live reaction to today's episode, and you can get video shoutouts like Tony is getting today, so I appreciate the support. So take care, everyone. Have a good one.